Hi, this is Mick Burgess. I'm now joined backstage at the O2 Academy in Newcastle by none other than Angry Anderson and Mark Evans from Rose Tattoo. How are you doing, chaps?
Hey,
yeah, we're doing
is
well.
it good morning or good afternoon? It's good afternoon.
It's good afternoon. Yeah. You've been over in the UK for a couple of days now on your latest UK tour. Are you pleased with the way the shows have been going so far? The reviews have been looking great.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
Oh, we're not allowed to read reviews. It's a government management policy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we get a bit full of ourselves, according to them.
Yeah, we don't need our tyres pumped up any further than what they are.
Mark's quick to point this out, that in a lot of cases, which is rather an amazing physical feat when you think about it, that the audience actually sing louder than the band. Now, I'm yet to be convinced of that, but they do sing very loudly.
Yeah. This is a good point to talk about your new lineup featuring Mark Evans, former AC/DC bassist. Mark, how did you end up in Rose Tattoo?
I've been trying to get into the band for 40 years.
40 plus.
40 plus years. No, so we've had right from the get-go, AC/DC and Rose Tattoo, we're out of the same stable, the Alberts, George Young, Harry Vander thing. And, I was playing with AC/DC. We also had Phil Rudden, which was another cohort of Angries. And it's just, we got to know all the guys in the original band, including the lineup with Geordie. And I've just been gravitated to the band ever since then, and I'm on record for many years now saying that Rose Tattoo are my favourite band. They have been, and it's just a real buzz for me now to be involved with the band, working with...
In the band?
Yeah, in the band. In the bands, thank you. Quite true. I guess I'm in the band now.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like involved or committed.
Yeah, involved, yeah.
The chicken is committed. No, the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. You're not
it's just... I mentioned to Angry the other day. I really have this feeling it's probably the second real band I've ever been in, because I've been very close to the band, and with Ian and particularly Mick and Digger and Pete. Although I wasn't particularly close to Pete because I was so scared of him.
No one did.
Yeah, and that was it. But I really feel it's a real privilege to be involved with the band now and be honouring what those guys did before.
Yeah.
And that's what adds to the gravitas of the whole thing for me. I just love being in the band. I've always loved the band, and now to be able to continue on what those guys can't, it's very important. Very important thing for me personally. It's hey, you go around travelling around with your mates and having a couple of quiet drinks.
Can't be beat.
And do plain Rose Tattoo music. It's just not, it can't be too. It's not too bad,
We were saying
Bob Spencer from the Angels as well. It's just
great player.
A great.
Bob's kind of in the same, in the same category really as Mark. He's been around us forever.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely. So if if you wait for any amount of time, something that you want or even something you need, eventually it'll end up in your lap, so to speak.
Yeah, I've been really pleased how it's panned out too. It's speaking from once being an outsider to being inside.
Yeah,
it's the transition, or it hasn't even been a transition. It just clicked straight in, didn't it?
Yeah.
They just went bang and.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
First rehearsal, Di said, "Yeah, it sounds like the Tats."
Yeah,
that's going to be a plus.
Imagine really sound like the fucking Bee Gees. But I think one of I'm a great believer in the wisdom of the divine process, and it's quite easy and cliche to say now, well, this was destined to happen, but it was.
Yeah.
I mean,
it feels like it, doesn't it?
The relationships that we have now were might have been 30 to 40 years in the making. Mm-hmm. Like Bob, I first met Bob and I was in Buster. Mm-hmm. This is before I'd even met Mark.
That's Phil Rudd, with Phil Rudd as well.
Phil was in Buster as well.
Yeah.
And we were playing in Sydney, and Bob played as a 17-year-old in a band called Finch, and they were playing a lot of free stuff. And I just thought, Jesus, the kid is he's got this thing, and he's still got it now, but he's been developing it all these years, obviously.
Yeah, he's a hell of a guitar player.
Yeah, he's as quirky as like a $3 bill, but he was the one. And same with Mark. I mean, people said, that was a great choice, pedigree, blah blah blah. And I go, yeah, well, it's also about the thing about playing our material is there's an expertise involved in playing the instrument, but it's more about an attitude. So we're all from Melbourne. We all understand football. We all understand where we came from in relation to one another. Like what area we actually grew up in. We grew up with that knowledge of those areas. Like they were either allies or they were enemies. Because it was very
fairly incendiary sort of period of time too in Melbourne. It was very it was violent.
Yeah, it was. I mean, but that's what I'm saying. It was very tribal.
Like tribal. Let's get that.
People often ask us, like, how true is the Butcher and Fast Eddie? Well, it's a true story. I mean, the title Fast Eddie was fictitious. Mick came up with that. But Butcher was a local bloke, not from my area, but from another area. And we used to, and we fought. Well, it wasn't. We didn't tribalise to fight. It was just tribal. But Melbourne's divided into half as a city by a river, and there's suburbs south of the river, and there's suburbs north of the river, and they were always, once Sharpies came into being, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah, they were like stylised after the Droogs from Clockwork Orange. Very similar. I just thought of something. I'm a southerner, you're a northerner.
Which proves love can conquer all.
So was Pete involved at all in suggesting Dave Pritchard for the band when he was ill? Did he sort of say let's continue the legacy?
I don't actually know whether he suggested it, but yes. I think you may be right, but it was kind of like it just happened because we used to. I mean, Thorpe borrowed Paul for his band playing drums, DeMarco, and when Pete got ill, it may have even been DeMarco who suggested. He said, "Well, Di is he's such a great player, and he's." So I rang him up and spoke to him, and I said, it's slide. You don't play slide. He said, mate, I'm fanging to play slide. And he said, I have been for years. He said, I love slide. I'd love to be in a band where he said, and I said, well, okay. And so Pete said, and the main criticism of Di, which is part of the reason why he got the job, is he doesn't play anything like Pete. But, I mean, it would have been foolish. It would have been dishonourable, I reckon, to try and replicate Pete's playing. And there's two players in Sydney, lovely people, God bless their socks, that have learned every lick and nuance that Wells ever played. So they don't play it anything like it. Well, they play all the licks, but they don't play like, no one can play like Pete. But he may have been another fucking alien as well. But Di came in, and what he brought to the band was a fresh approach. And, a different kind of intensity than Pete's. Pete's is very sort of dark, aloof, very menacing sort of, which goes paid to what you were saying about, but people were not afraid of Pete, but they were afraid of what he, the way he was.
I was the opinion that he hated my guts.
Yeah, well, so did I for the first 2 or 3 years of the band. He never spoke to me for, unless he had to. But then again, years later, I found out that, I was not his choice. Rylands was insistent. And the only thing that got me past the post with Pete was when we were jamming and we do lots of covers. We did Stones covers and stuff, but we did a couple of Faces covers. And he loved the Faces. In fact, one of the things that he and I, and this is another thing which sort of got me a modicum of approval with Peter in the early days, was we both thought that Ronnie Wood was apart from the old black blues guys, particularly loud like Jolly Hooker and people like that, the best slide player in the world was not Keith Richards, it was Ronnie Wood.
Yeah. That's fair.
And because my favourite rock band is the Faces. But
mine too.
apart from this lineup, I mean the volatility in this lineup is different. The volatility in the old days was very self-destructive. So the band could only be together for a short amount of time, and then it tore itself apart.
Yeah.
And it did it, repeatedly over the career, if you like, or the history of this band. Which is one of the 5 reasons, I suppose, that we never produced more albums, because it was just really difficult. And we were. The great thing about it is, and this is where our chemical composition is so good now, because we're producing the same kind of result musically without all the fucking
without the labour,
the volatility of tearing one another to pieces. But we're not. See, the other thing too, and a lot of people didn't realise in those days is that, I mean, obviously we're all alcoholics, and we all, like 4 of us were addicted to drugs. Of one sort or another. I mean, there was 2 heroin addicts in the band, and so we're all, fighting at night. This room full of bats and demons, So the only way to sort of deal with that was to obliterate ourselves. But the liberation, if you like, the therapy was that hour and a half on stage.
Was that how Southern Stars ended up with just you and Geordie, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, Robin was initially involved in that, and he bailed, and so was Digger, because after Pete left during that last American tour, we came home and we said, well, look, it's probably we're going to need another break. We can't guarantee that the band will come back together. So we said to Albert's, like, can we get out of the deal? And we'd only produced 3 albums, and George, who was always totally supportive of the idea of the band and what the band produced when it was, pressured into it. He said, and I love George for that, I love him all these years for that, because he forced us to go and produce another album. Now, during the rehearsal phase, if you like, the others one by one, for reasons which we need not to go into because they're still alive, they left, and so we had to go and find other players to replace them. But I'm really, really glad. I mean, apart from the cover, which is the worst cover ever produced by a fucking record company for an album. Well, it is, it is. I mean, even worse than Bungie. But
I think Geordie's still around from the original line. Do you still bump into Geordie every now and then, or is he?
Robin is too. Robin Riley is still around.
Do you still see those guys?
We don't see them, but we communicate with them. And the oft-asked question is, why aren't they in the lineup? Well, it's because we've moved on.
Yeah.
And they're both moved into areas or directions musically. Away from what we are and what we're doing. Robin's got physical limitations, he can't, he has to sit down to play, and he's been constantly battling cancer for 10 years.
Yeah, he's had a rough run.
I think your band's had a rough run with that, but you're now an ambassador for cancer awareness for men. Is that right?
I actually. There's a story attached to that. I mean, when I was doing television, 85 to 90, on a magazine show that was shown during the day, so it was for mums and dads.
5 days a week.
Yeah. And so my brief was to sort of represent things that normally weren't represented on television. So like testicular cancer and colon cancer and blah blah blah. So we did that. We did it with women too, with ovarian and fallopian tube and uterine stuff. Stuff that people didn't talk about.
Yeah.
But because of who and what I am, they used me as the novelty, and I was in between bands, so it was perfect for me timing wise. But anyway, long story short, years later, Peter rings me up and says, "What do you know about prostate?" I said, "I know a little bit about it because I put the Prostate Foundation on television. We did it as a segment, talked about prostate. What's prostate? Well, it's this gland that's inside, that accesses up through your anus, blah, 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 and like people were going, well, thank Christ someone's talking about it. Finally, it was kind of that rave. And then I said, why, Pete? And he said, well, I've got it. And he said, I said, well, what's the prognosis like? And he said, it's not great, it's not bad. He said, but, and he quoted it, he said something really, really wise later. He said, I'm not dying of prostate, I'm dying of ignorance, because he didn't know.
Yeah.
So I became...
That's a great line.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I used it to... he says to me while this is like the last couple of months he's in hospital, he said, we've got to do something about this, you know, the we've, like, you know, whenever he said, we've got to sack Mick or we've got to sack Jigger, it was always me that the we was like, he gave the command, I carried it out. So I was used to the we've part. And I thought, you fucking shitbag, you're going to die in a couple of months. And but, you know, I became an ambassador for prostate. But it's rolled on from there. Now, mainly I do mental health. Because, you know, I'm a massive depressive.
Yeah, but at least, you know, something's positive's coming from it anyway, so...
Oh, fuck yeah, that's great wisdom. Again, the wisdom of the divine.
Well, that's like anything like that. Any negative, you get yourself into trouble if it gets over the top of you. Use it as fuel.
Yeah.
Use it as fuel to, like...
If you're hard pie smart, you do.
Yeah. Well, after the tour's finished in the UK, where do you head next? Are you back over into Europe, or are you back home?
Well, we go...
Actually, no.
We do go to Europe.
We do?
Yeah. We go to Belgium, Netherlands and France. France.
That's
Whatever. I'm going to answer my plans.
I think
And then we do go back to Australia.
France. She says France.
Envelope. Let's call the whole thing off.
Let's tell you. Yeah.
And then we get back to Australia and but we'll be back here.
Yeah.
We'll be before you know it, we'll be back. Doing another
So
interview.
you'll be doing the recording of the debut album, and we can see you.
Pretty much within days or weeks of us getting back.
All right. Well, Angry Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure.
You've got to say that.
Did you say it was a pleasure?
Did you get halfway through your? Did you get halfway through?
I got no.
You did well though.
Abandoned those a long time ago. They're the best ones. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much, and best of luck with the show tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.